Hello, everyone. Whether you're watching on our YouTube channel or you are tuning into our podcast, we're thrilled to have you with us. I'm John. I am the digital pastor at The Ridge, and we are in the second week of our series called At the Movies. Now, during At the Movies, we take clips from popular movies and we blend them together with teachings from our pastors. And this is to help us better understand just the helpful life teachings from Jesus in the Bible. It's this creative way of engaging, and it's a way to help us grow our faith and our understanding of God and have a lot of fun along the way. Now, due to copyright laws, unfortunately, we can't post these messages on YouTube or make them available on demand. We can only stream them on our website. So if you haven't already, I want to invite you to join us for At the Movies. It's streaming each week, and you can find all the details by visiting our website and clicking on At the Movies. Or you can just follow the link in the description. Now, while we can't stream At the Movies on demand, what we can do on demand is we are bringing back one of our favorite series from the archives of The Ridge, How to Love Your Life. This series focuses on how adjusting our pace of life can lead to truly loving it. Now, for those of you who are watching for the first time, and you're trying to get a feel for what an average weekend service at The Ridge looks like, I want to invite you to check out our Relationships on Purpose series. You can find that in our show notes. And that'll give you a really good idea of what you can expect from an average service. But for today, let's continue week 2 of How to Love Your Life.
Hey, it's great to be with everybody who is here, and welcome all those who are joining us online as well. As today we are continuing in our How to Love Your Life series. And the reality is that most of us would say we love things about our lives. I mean, we love some of the things about our lives, people that are in our lives, some of the experiences that we get to experience in our lives, but we don't actually love our lives. And last week, I actually had Forrest on this beautiful thing right here, and Forrest was going to give us a picture of what our lives look like. In fact, we have some video footage of last week of Forrest getting it done there. Now, what was great, I know for some of you were asking, did he get hurt? I mean, because this was one service, and was there multiple services? And we're thankful to say that Forrest made it through all the services, and he did it well. But as we said last week, our strategy for living our lives is often this. We add more and then go faster. And then we add more and we go faster, and we add more and we go faster, and we add more and go faster. But the more we add and the faster that we go, the less we love our lives. And as we said last week, as we were looking at Forrest running on the treadmill, I mean, you can't love your life when that's your life. And so, we just said, is there a better way to live our lives than that? And so we're kicking off 2022 by talking about a better way. And that way that we're talking about is actually found in the life of Jesus. And if you follow Jesus, many of us think that the goal is just to follow the teachings of Jesus, and that's really important. But the goal in following Jesus is actually to shape our entire life after the life of Jesus. And Jesus lived a certain way, and he is the ultimate example for us of how we are to live our life. And we said last week that the way that Jesus lived his life was slow and productive. And we kind of hear that, we go like, what? It's like, yeah, slow and productive. He was never in a hurry, yet he was the most productive person in all of history. And so if we want to love our lives, the secret is found in 2 words that we are not really good at. Slow down. Now, what's fascinating is that science is actually caught up with what Jesus has been talking about. Last week, we actually talked about this new disease that is growing rapidly in our culture right now. And here's the name of it, hurry sickness. And this phrase was actually coined by some psychologists and cardiologists. And research is showing that because of hurry, we are actually just destroying our lives. In fact, last week, if you were here, I actually gave a hurry sickness quiz, and most of you passed, which is really like saying most of us failed, because in passing, it actually showed that most of us struggle with hurry sickness. Now, if you missed last week, I want to encourage you to, you can download our app or go on our YouTube channel and watch it. And so then you can take the quiz and you can join the rest of us in our struggle with hurry sickness. Now, here's what Jesus said to a group of people who were just constantly adding more and going faster, adding more and going faster. And what he said to them is the same invitation that he gives to us. And these words of Jesus are the words that are driving our entire series. And so here's what Jesus says, and we're going to read it out of the Message version. He says this. He says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." And so we're kicking off the year by looking at the life of Jesus. And what we're going to discover is that Jesus lived with certain rhythms and practices. And so over the course of a series, we're going to look at 4 of those practices. And if you'd be willing to apply these practices in your life, here's my promise to you. Your hurry will not only go down, but your productivity will go up. And you'll actually have more time for the people that matter most, and your faith will grow all at the same time. In other words, you will love your life. Here's what psychologists would say is driving just the hurry in our life. One thing, fear. And this fear takes many forms. One of the forms is fear that we might not be enough. And so we feel like we have to do more so we can feel like more. Another form it takes is fear that we might not have enough. We even have a phrase that we use with this whole thing. All of us have heard it, keeping up with the Joneses. Let me ask you, why would it matter? And why would we feel like we would have to keep up with anyone? One thing, fear. And here's probably the most popular one. It's the fear of failure. You know, none of us wants to fail in anything, and so what we often do is we often overcompensate so we won't fail. Now, this one's a really big one for me. I feel this one all the time. For example, as a dad, I want to be a great dad. But I always feel a sense of, I'm failing as a father. And I always get the sense of, am I doing enough? Am I providing them enough? And so maybe because of that feeling, maybe I had to give them more experiences. Maybe I had to give them more things, which is never the right answer. I feel this in what I do all the time. I just feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm failing the staff. I feel like I'm failing you. And so I have this feeling of I don't want to fail. And so do I need to work harder and do more and work harder and do more? And you know what? This isn't just a feeling for me. This is how I think many of you feel as well. I think about business owners and CEOs and doctors and nurses and teachers and coaches and people who are working out in the trades. I think of people who are working 2 jobs, or you're a single parent, or I think you're a parent of a child with special needs, or you're caring for an aging parent right now. And you know what? You don't want to fail them. But the reality is that you don't feel like there is enough time in the day to get all the things done that you need to get done. And not just in the day, the entire week. There was a human resource study that was released recently, and it showed this, that 70% of the people feel like they have so much to do that they have to work 7 days a week just to get it all done. And I kind of hear that and I go like, that is no way to live. I don't want that. I don't want that for you. Listen, we could never love our life if that's the case, but we have to understand that the thing that's driving it all is some sort of fear. And so today what I want to do is I want to talk about a principle that will help us slow down. And this principle is actually my main New Year's resolution for the year, because I am so bad at this principle. And this principle was actually introduced to us in the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments, not only found in the 10 Commandments, but it's found throughout the entire scriptures. And we see it in the life of Jesus. So a little background on the 10 Commandments. So when Moses led the nation of Israel out of Egypt, and just before they were to enter the promised land, God wanted to make them into a nation. But he didn't want to make them into a nation like the other nations that had a king and the king determined everything. He wanted them to be a nation where he was the king and he led them. And so as a result, he gave them laws so they could understand, here's what it means to live with God as their king. And these laws, they were a gift from God. You know, these laws were God's way of saying, hey, if you follow these laws, this will help you to live your life in such a way where your life won't fall to pieces. And 10 of these laws kind of rose to the top, and these laws are known as the 10 Commandments. It's like, if you follow these laws, the rest is easy. You'll understand everything else. Now, our principle is actually found in the 4th commandment. Now, before I read you the 4th commandment, let me just go through the other 10. And I know some of you know some of these. Maybe you know all of them. The first one is you should worship only God. The second one is you shouldn't worship any idols. The third one is don't dishonor God's name. The fourth one, we're going to come back to that. The fifth one is honor your parents. I quote that one to my kids all the time. That's a really good one if you're a parent. And then it's don't commit murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, lie, and don't covet. And I think many of us would look at those and we would say, you know what? I see those, and the reality is, you know, none of us keeps those all the time, you know, but if we broke one of them, I mean, we wouldn't feel real great about ourselves if we broke one of them. But the fourth one, we have no problem breaking. So let me summarize the fourth one for you. Every 7 days, you take a day off and rest. That's it. And you think about that command, that, you know, we hear that command and we don't even have any problems breaking it. We brag about breaking it. I mean, we've said this here time and time again. What's the most common response when someone says, how you doing? Busy. Oh, busy. Oh, I haven't slowed down in 4 weeks. Now, we wouldn't do this with any of the other commandments. We wouldn't go, how are you doing? Well, you know, I've cheated on my wife for the last 4 weeks now, you know? No, we wouldn't do that. That wouldn't be okay with us. But for some reason, breaking this one is okay with us. So let me read it to you. Here's the fourth commandment. Remember, and I think that's an interesting word because we're prone to forget this one. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. And holy just means set apart. It just means that this day is different from any other day because it's set apart. And then he says, remember the Sabbath day, that the seventh day should be set apart as a Sabbath. And Sabbath means this, to stop or to seize. So he's literally saying this, remember to stop, remember to have a stop day and set that day apart from any other day. Well, it's like, okay, well, what should I stop? Well, he tells us, he says this, he says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. Well, what should I stop doing? Well, any work. Well, what's any? It means any. It means any texts, any phone calls, any emails, any appointments, includes even housework. Now, what's interesting is that God knows that we love to come up with excuses, that we love to look for loopholes for things, and so he doesn't stop. Listen to what he says. He says, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. And he says, hey, and you're not to do it through anyone or anything else, and that includes your animals. Now, I would bet that, you know, most of us don't have pets that can do the work for us, okay? So for us, that might mean, you know, any machines or technology. And so the fourth commandment is every 7 days that we are to take a Sabbath. Literally, we are to take a stopping day and stop from all work. I can look at it this way. Every seventh day, we're to step off of this thing right here. Now, think about this for a minute. In God's top 10, all right, in God's top 10 of all the things, he would have to command us to rest. I mean, isn't that kind of crazy when you think about it? If you're going to think of, hey, if you were to create top 10, would rest even be on there? But it's on there. I love what Pastor John Mark Comer says about this. He says this. He says, God commanded us to rest seems like God commanding us to eat ice cream or like listen to good music or go to the beach one day. Now, if he was to command us, let's say, to eat ice cream every day. I mean, wouldn't that be like the coolest thing possible? I mean, be a Dairy Queen every single day. God commanded it. That's why I'm here. God commanded it. I mean, we'd be, let's do it. But for some reason, God had to command us to rest. You see, God knew that there's something so deeply wrong with us that we just do anything that we can do to get ahead and be successful, even at the expense of ourselves and those around us. So God commands us to stop one day and rest. Here's what's interesting about this commandment, some interesting tidbits. This is actually the longest of all the commandments. Once again, I think God knew that we were going to struggle with it. And this is the only commandment that comes with an explanation attached to it. Here's the explanation. For 6 days, the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he made it holy. And so it says, God blessed the Sabbath. I think in just saying that, that kind of just raises this question. God bless the Sabbath. It raises this question. Could it be that the reason that we feel so exhausted, the reason that we feel like, man, I just can't get off this thing. I can't get off the treadmill. Come on, I just need to do more and go faster. I need to do more and go faster. The reason why we're so stressed out and anxious, the reason why we can't really experience any peace in our life, the reason why that is might just be that we are breaking one of God's top 10 commandments. And the reality is that we all want to love our lives. We want to enjoy our lives. And I think we want God to bless our lives. But the reality is that we can't experience the blessings of God without following the principles of God. And so he says, hey, listen, I've given you the Sabbath, I've commanded you for the Sabbath, and I'm gonna bless the Sabbath. And so if we want, we can ignore it, we can brag about ignoring it, but in doing so, we are missing out on some of the sweet and powerful blessings of God in our life. Now, when we get this explanation from God, God was actually taking us back to the creation narrative. And I was like, well, what did God do at creation? Well, here's what God did. And I want you to notice as I read this, just notice how similar the words are to the words that I just read. Here's in the book of Genesis, it says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy because on it, he rested from the work of creating that he had done. And so I don't think in God resting, he was going like, oh man, I'm so worn out. I just need to take a day off and rest. I don't think that God was doing it for him. You see, he was doing it for us. And in resting, he was creating a rhythm that would become a part of the DNA of all creation and that we were created to follow. And when we don't follow it, we end up being out of sync with the way that God created us to live. It's why, when we were looking at the treadmill last week, we were kind of looking at this and we were watching Forrest and we were all laughing about it because you know what? We could identify with it, but something just didn't seem right about it because something's not right about it. It's why that God blessed the Sabbath. Now, do you know that there are only 3 things that God blessed in the creation narrative? 3 things. You know what they are? Well, the first one is God blessed the animals, even cats, all right? And I have a picture of one of our cats at home here. There's Buddy. Buddy comes every once in a while at the church here. And does he not look like he's living the blessed life? I mean, look at that right now. He is living, and he takes a Sabbath every single day, which is interesting very much. So God blessed the animals and he said, be fruitful and multiply. Second thing he blessed was humanity. And as he looked at humanity, he said, same thing. He said, be fruitful and multiply. And then the last thing he blessed is he blessed a day. He blessed time, and that is the Sabbath. Now, the word blessing just means this. It means to invoke divine favor, to fill with strength. And so here's what this means. It means this. It means God blessing the Sabbath means just like a person or an animal, the Sabbath has the life-giving capacity to procreate. That God blessing the Sabbath, because when we take a day off, as God tells us a day off, that he will multiply or give life to the other 6 days. And we discover very quickly that we can accomplish more in 6 days with God's blessing than 7 days without it. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a logical thinker. And so when I say, okay, wait a minute, we can accomplish more in 6 days with God's blessing than 7 without, okay, that doesn't add up to me. But this principle goes back to a lot of other principles we see about God. In fact, one of them, it goes back to the principle, if you're a Christian, it's one of our favorite things to talk about, the principle of tithing. And tithing goes like this. When we bring God the first 10%, when we bring that back to God, he blesses the 90%. And that 90% with God's blessing goes further than the 100% without it. And I first heard that, I was like, okay, wait a minute, numbers don't add up. But I trusted God, and here's the thing, now you can't get me not to tithe. So when we take that day off, as God commanded us to do, he blesses the other 6. We're able to accomplish more in 6 with God's blessing than 7 without it. And it's like, Mark, once again, it just doesn't add up. The Sabbath is all about trust. And so when we take the step to trust God, it opens up the blessings of God in our life. Now, it's so easy to hear you talk about the Sabbath and all that stuff, and to rest and to take the day off, and we read it back in Bible times. We're like, okay, that was back then, Mark, all right? They didn't have technology, and they didn't have social media, and, Mark, they didn't have the pressure that we do to perform. I mean, Mark, they didn't have a 21st century modern economy. They didn't have that. I would argue that they had actually had more pressure on them than we do today. Because they actually lived day to day. If they didn't work, they didn't eat. And so for them to take a day off was a huge step of trust. But here's the thing. We actually have some 21st century examples of this very thing. That there are 2 companies, well-known companies, that actually practice the Sabbath. That they actually take a day off when every one of their competitors works 7 days. Now, do you know what they are? All right, here's the first one. That's right, Chick-fil-A. Now, I know not everybody eats at Chick-fil-A. Okay, I have twin boys that work at Chick-fil-A, so I've eaten very well at Chick-fil-A for free when they get done with work. But let's just say this. Let's just say it's a Sunday afternoon, and you are hungry for a chicken sandwich. And so you drive to Chick-fil-A. I got good news and I got bad news for you. The good news is you won't have to wait in line like you usually have to wait in line there. The bad news is that you will be waiting all the way till Monday because they are closed on Sundays. And if you go on their website, it actually tells the story of where this came to be. Truett Cathy, their founder, actually implemented this whole thing, and Truett was a Christian, and he just decided as they launched this restaurant, he thought it'd be a good idea that they would take a day, and he and the employees would get a day for rest and worship if they wanted to worship. And they implemented this back in 1946, and they've been doing it ever since. Now, fast forward to today. And apparently no one told their current CEO, Dan Cathy, that, hey, Dan, you just need to know this, that Sundays are the highest grossing sales days for fast food restaurants. Dan, you can't continue to stay closed on Sundays. You can't do it because, listen, you're not going to be as profitable and you're not going to make as much money as the other competitors in the industry. Well, at the end of 2020, they released the sales figures, the profitability numbers, and here's what they found. That the average Chick-fil-A store makes over $1 million more per store than the number 2 store in their industry, or number 2 competitor in their industry. $1 million per store. And they are closed on the highest grossing sales day of the week. Okay, now the second one. Does anyone know what the second one is? Hobby Lobby. That's right. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've never been in a Hobby Lobby. I don't think they're targeting me, and so I've never been in there, all right? Now, the Hobby Lobby, if you look at their story is very, very similar to Chick-fil-A's, and they are the most profitable in their industry, and they're growing like weeds. And David Green, who I've read David Green's book, really good book. David Green, their CEO, in a recent interview, talked about why they're closed on Sundays, and here's what he said. He said, I have to go back to God's word and have faith in God's word. That is what I know God wants. And so here you have 2 examples of companies that are thriving, and they take 1 day off. Now, why are they thriving? Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, okay? I think there's a lot. But I think one of the reasons that you can't overlook is that they are really trusting that they can accomplish more in 6 days with God's blessing than they can 7 days without it. And listen, the numbers point to that being true. So here's what I'll do is I'll wrap up. I want to just get real practical with you on some ways that you can practice the Sabbath. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to answer two what I think are just the most common questions when it comes to the Sabbath. And so here's the first one. What day is the Sabbath? All right, what day? Is it Sunday? Because, I work on Sundays. I can't do Sundays. No, the Sabbath is not necessarily on Sundays. The Sabbath, the idea of the Sabbath is that every 7 days that we take a 24-hour period to just step off the treadmill and we rest. So my Sabbath is from Friday at 4 p.m. to Saturday at 4 p.m. And so if you try to call me or email me, I'm just going to let you know, I ain't emailing you back or calling you back because it is my Sabbath. So there are some times with my work schedule that things come up and I have to, they come up and break my Sabbath and I just take another 24-hour period. So it's a 24-hour period. Now here's the biggest question. Well, what do I do? What do I do? And I know for most of us, we're like, I'd rather ask what can I do, And so that's the way we like it. But I like the positive way of saying it. What do I do? Now remember, the goal of the Sabbath is this, to rest. It's to rest. And so here's how I answer that question. I've come up with these 3 words, and these 3 words have just really helped clarify and get me to the goal of the Sabbath. And here are the 3 words: disconnect, reconnect, and recharge. Disconnect, reconnect, and recharge. And the order is important. The first thing is to disconnect, because we are so connected all the time. We're always on, we're always available, and as a result, we can never truly step off of this thing. Now, the question that we got to ask is, okay, well, how do I disconnect? How do I really do that? Now, here's a crazy idea, and for some of you, you're going to be like, I ain't doing that. But I want to challenge you to do this, all right? Because it's going to sound crazy for some of us. Okay, here's a crazy idea. What if you took your cell phone and any other devices like this, any other technology, and you just put them in a box and then you put them in a cupboard for 24 hours and you didn't touch them? Now, I know some of you, your parents are like, oh, my kids will hate me. They'll get over it. Here's what you're thinking. I'll hate me. You will get over it. You see, we need to be very intentional about detaching just from the regular rhythms of life. Otherwise, we can't do this second part really well. And that's reconnect. And reconnect is all about prioritizing the relationships in our life. It starts with our relationship with God, that the Sabbath was given by God, and it's for God. And so we want to spend part of our Sabbath, and we want to carve out some time for God. Maybe it's read the Bible or do some devotions, or you just do some journaling time, reflect on the last 6 days. Maybe you can pray for the 6 that are coming up. One of the prayers that I'll often pray on the Sabbath is, God, help me to enjoy this day, because I get a little ornery in the Sabbath. God, help me to enjoy this day and the life and the people that you have put in my path. Maybe that's a prayer that you pray. But it's also about reconnecting with people. And I talk about people, just the people that matter to us the most, your family and your friends and your ones. And listen, have fun, play together, laugh together, eat together, and do it without interruptions. And then finally, you need to recharge. Recharge is, what are the things that fill your cup up? What are those? Maybe it's to take a nap. Maybe it's to eat a long meal. Maybe it's to build something that's not related to work or anything like that. Maybe it's to read a book or watch sports or watch a movie or shop for fun. What is that for you? For me, it is to take a nap, to exercise. Don and I will sometimes go for walks when the weather is nice, or watch a movie together. But what is it in you that just brings you life and joy, and do those things on the Sabbath? There's been thousands of studies done over the last 10 years of just the long-term effects of not following the Sabbath and what that has on our life. And data has showed that we are literally killing ourselves because of it and because of the pace in our life. There's actually a groundbreaking study that was recently done, and it was done by National Geographic, which is not a Christian publication or a Christian study. And it was actually headed up by this guy named David Butner. And Butner went around all over the world, and he went around to countries like China and Japan, and he was studying the groups of people that were living the longest in those particular countries. In America, he actually found a surprising group of people that were living longer than any other group of people in this country. Now, do you know who that group is? That group is the Seventh-day Adventists. And the Seventh-day Adventists, they strictly hold to the Sabbath. And what he found is this, is that on average, they live 10 years longer than almost every single American group. Now, I want you to think about this. If you were to take every day off, one out of every 7 days, or you live 7 days and take 1 day off for your entire life, from birth all the way till you die, do you know what that adds up to? Just over 10 years. You see, the way God created us to live, the way he just wired it into the very fabric of creation is for us, for every 7 days, to take 1 day off to rest. And when we don't, we are literally taking days and days and days and maybe even years off our life. And so here's what I want to challenge you to do. I want to challenge you to join me and to begin to practice the principle of the Sabbath. And just do it for a month, okay? Just do it 4 times. Just take a 24-hour period. And then I just want you to think this. I'm going to disconnect, I'm going to reconnect, and I'm going to recharge. And I'm telling you, it'll be hard at first if you're not used to doing it. You're going to get ornery and all that good stuff, and you're going to want to do this and do that and do this and do that. Listen, but here's what I know. I really believe that God is going to change some things about your life. And the reason I know that God's going to change some things about your life is just from a practical standpoint. You will step off of this thing. And for many of you, you haven't truly stepped off of this thing in months or maybe even years. But I know that he will do some things to change your life, because when we follow the principles of God, it's only then that we experience the blessings of God. And God wants to bless your life. So take a Sabbath. Listen, take the step, test God, get off the treadmill, and watch how you love your life.
Well, thanks for watching through and hearing Mark as he shared on why God commands us to rest and how that can make such a big impact on our lives. I hope that you'll find your own space this week to try and take a little bit of a Sabbath. Now, sometimes practices like this are hard to do on our own. And so I want to encourage you to head over to our website, where you can find resources that talk through all the principles that we talked about today, and we're going to talk about through this series. One of the things that's really important to us is to make sure that you have everything that you need to experience all the hope that Jesus has to offer. And if there are different topics like mental health and parenting that you want resources for, you can find those on our website too. Now, if you prefer, we would love to send these types of resources straight to you each week in an email. And you can get a resource of the week. And along with that resource is all the upcoming things that are happening around the Ridge each week. And you can get that sent to you. Just send us a text, and that's going to help you get connected. You can also use that to ask questions about things for your kids, groups, at the movies, and a lot more. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And be sure to check out At the Movies, streaming every Sunday at 9 and 10:30 on our website. Now, may the hope of Jesus be in your home as we work together to bring it to the homes of those around us.